the newest episode of the Pretty Okay podcast. I am your host, Taylor Holman. And today we are going to be talking about marketing, which y'all know is like the thing that I could talk about ad nauseum. But when you think about marketing and where you're going to start with marketing, I would go so far as to like put a full body guess that you're probably thinking about, okay, well, I need to start with goals. I need to think about my ideal clients and all of the content that I need to create when it comes to marketing. And all of that is super important, but there is another element to this. There's another way you can think about marketing. There's another path that you can go, like venture and journey down when you're trying to get to that ultimate goal and final destination that we're all chasing. And so that's why I have my new friend, Frenchie, on as our guest today, because this is her jam. Like, she and I are both marketing folks, but I love that we approach this from two different angles and they are super complementary. And so I think we're like peas and carrots. But Frenchie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to chat with you and just get into it.
Yeah. So in case people are meeting you for the first time, what are the must-know things about Frenchie?
I'm Frenchie Ferenczi. I am a revenue and growth strategist for small businesses. I work mostly with solopreneurs, side hustlers, and consultants who are looking to build something of their own and really create an independent revenue stream. I think like that is the key for so many people, is that we're doing all this work and all this marketing work, but ultimately the outcome that we're looking for is revenue that we make on our own terms and on our own time.
I love that. Oh my God. So true about being money that we make on our own terms, on our own time. I mean, I know that that's a huge part of, the listeners of the Pretty Okay podcast. Is a lot of them are service providers. And so they end up feeling stuck because they're just trading their time for money.
Yep.
And that eventually gets exhausting.
Yeah.
And so, like today, I think one of the really great things that we're going to get out of this conversation is just, I think a way to approach marketing differently, sort of quasi reverse engineer things, so to speak, to get to where we're all trying to go. And quick aside, fun fact, guys, the E in Frenchie's logo is also the same E as the NG logo.
Yes.
And so that's like super kismet. So I was like, I don't even know where the fuck this logo came or this font came from. And our graphic designer was the one who like brought it to life. And so that was one of the first things that Frenchie pointed out when we were meeting. And I was like, oh, that's so awesome.
Yes.
So
I love that.
Brand spirits. So, okay. So I actually don't know the answer to this question, Frenchie. And so how is it that you landed on a money first approach, like really being your approach and your jam when it comes to marketing?
Yeah. So the way that I got there was kind of by accident, as with all good things, right? And really what I started to see is that when I first started, I was talking a lot about strategy. I was talking a lot about prioritization. I was talking a lot about time management. And I was talking about all these different things that are really important when we think about growing and building our businesses. But what I noticed was that it didn't always like come together cohesively. And I was like, well, where's the missing piece? And then one day I was on a call with one of my clients at the time, who's a copywriter. So done for you service provider. And she was like, well, maybe I should make a reel and then that will help to drive interest to my Instagram. And then maybe that will lead to some client. It was just this whole very long thing. And I was like, no, you have to stay close to the money. And she was like, what? And I was like, what? Oh my goodness. I was like, yes.
You're like, that's it.
That makes so much sense. But I was just seeing all this work that was happening that was kind of like, that you could connect the dots between actually doing that work and the revenue on the back end of it. But what would be the faster, more effective way to drive those sales? And that was kind of how it all started. And then what I really realized was like, we want to lead with the impact that our work has. And then when we start to think about strategy and productivity and time management and prioritization, everything ties into a very clear and measurable goal, which is our revenue. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do what you're doing if you don't make money, if it brings you joy and it makes you happy. But for most of us, we're doing this to also pay ourselves and sustain a lifestyle and, take care of our families and, whatever, all the things, travel. And so being really clear about what we're working towards and the impact and outcome that we want from our work then allows us to prioritize better, be more focused, be more effective and efficient, and increase the likelihood of actually getting to that outcome.
I have heard you say stay close to the money. It's very clearly, I was like, if I were to guess your tagline, that's what I would have guessed. But to hear the story behind it is cool, that it was just like organically something you said to someone and you're like, oh, that's fucking it. Like that says all the things. And I think it's so helpful as a tagline that we all should like temporarily tattoo across our foreheads. I'm not an advocate for face tattoos. Do what you will if that's your jam. It's not my jam. So temporary tattoo across my forehead about staying close to the money. And, that's one of the big reasons why KPIs are something that I'm constantly standing on a soapbox about, because when you actually look at the numbers and you're not just taking a softer like content first and content distribution approach, then that's how you can end up with a plan that's like, no, well, it runs right next to the straightest, shortest line that connects me and the money that I need to live my life fully, which is awesome. So what's the biggest mistake that you see people making or like getting stuck with and overthinking when they're trying to figure out their marketing?
So I think there's a couple of things. Every business owner I've met has a lot of like emotional attachment to their to-do list.
Yes. Hi, it me.
So I think that's one piece is actually like, I really like to take to-do list to the chopping block. And sometimes people are like, Frenchie, you're really intentional about this. I'm like, yes, I am a little bit mean because if we don't know why we're doing something, then why are we doing it?
Yeah.
So I think that's one really key piece is actually like going through the work that you're doing and asking yourself why, and not just like why this is not about self-judgment. This is truly back to the KPIs. What impact is this having or do I want it to have, right? Sometimes we don't see the impact of things yet, but what impact do we want it to have? I think the other piece, and we can kind of get into this more maybe when you think it's the right time for it, is like when we think about our marketing, a lot of times I see people being like, I need to market, blah. But like every piece and component of your marketing needs to have a specific job. And if you're not clear on those jobs, and I think about it through the lens of the 5 core functions of marketing, I think there's a lot of different kind of ways to slice that pie, then you're just doing work, but you're not necessarily actually doing the right work at the right time. So I think those are 2 kind of good starting points. And then the third one that I'm going to add, especially because I want to just bring some awareness around the specific challenges of the service-based service delivery business owner, is that if you are not carving out a set period of time regularly to actually market your own business, you end up in this constant like cycle of too busy, not busy enough, too busy, not busy enough. And so anyone I've worked with who is in that space, we've really had to figure out what is their like MVP bare minimum like marketing strategy. And I know you really help with that, but I think knowing that that's essential can be motivating, or at least it's an important reminder.
It is a super important reminder. And that is, I mean, Frenchie, talk about like life goals of what I want to figure out before my time here on the spinning rock is up. It's why is the marketing can the first can that gets kicked down the road for business owners and very egregiously offensive or offended by service providers, right? Like my client work, my project work is more important.
Yeah.
I need to answer this email. I need to fill in the blank. And I mean, I said this once on Threads. I was like, I'm pretty sure I said, the feast or famine cycle you're in is your fault.
Ooh.
And I was like, I know that's some really like the soft kid gloves came off when I typed. Clearly didn't type that with those on, but it's super true because we make a choice to not market our business consistently.
Yep.
And that bare minimum, this is my bare minimum marketing strategy and execution. Like people just continually bite off more than they can chew.
Yep.
So, that's why people like Frenchie and myself are here, because we want you to, as marketers, you and I know like what marketing at scale looks like, what marketing at scale feels like. And there's this huge disconnect between what most business owners think they need to do and like they think they need to do marketing at scale. I'm like, no, you don't.
Right.
Save that for the other folks. So, which I think moves really nicely into my next question and thing that I wanted to talk about, which is time.
Mm-hmm.
It is the enemy of all things that we're continually going to fight as humans, whether we're, whether we think of ourselves as our business owning selves, our service provider selves, our parental selves, or just like us as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your tips for making sure that your marketing is actually doing its job and it's not just like shit on your to-do list that's sucking up your time?
Yeah. Okay. So, couple things. This is where I'm going to talk about the 5 core functions again and just like go into a little bit more detail on how I break it down with people. So when I'm thinking about people's revenue strategy and their growth strategy, I am then looking at their marketing and breaking it down into, this is like not rocket science, but lead generation, nurturing, conversion, delivery, and retention / upsell / referral, right? And I say this because we have to take the marketing blob and turn it into action items. And then the action items need to be measurable. And so this is the first step of breaking down the marketing blob into what is the real gap in my business right now. And now most people, especially when they're starting, are like, well, lead generation is the gap. And I'm like, maybe not.
But is it?
But we start to look at, okay, in these 5 areas, which of these needles is the biggest needle that I need to move? Do I need to actually grow my audience? Do I need to focus on nurturing better? Delivery, to all of you who are really committed to a great client experience, delivery is a huge marketing lever that you can pull because it drives those renewals and it drives that experience. It's just that you also sometimes need to be doing more than one thing at a time. So, in terms of then seeing what works, once you start to break it down, what I like to do is actually go through, like if I were to give you an exercise, I'd be like, go through all your tasks that you do regularly, assign which of these 5 areas you want that task to actually influence. And then if you have data on that, collect the data. Or if you can even anecdotally validate that that has done something for you in the past or not, it can give you more evidence to move forward on it. So that's really where I start is like we take the marketing blob, we break it down, and then we start to assign an impact to the work. And then we start to see like, okay, I posted on LinkedIn, the call to action was to join my newsletter. Did anybody join? And we can start to look both in macro and micro levels. And I think where NG has been super helpful as I like go into the KPI dashboard is like, okay, I see the growth, I see all the work that I'm doing, and then I see the impact that it has. But I do think knowing which area you're trying to work on at a specific time is important. So to give you a different kind of larger example of this, of the 5 core functions coming into play together, imagine you're launching in January. It's September. You are thinking in September, typically, if I'm working with someone on launch, I'm like, this is your audience growth time. This is when you're focusing on lead generation. Then you need to get into nurturing. Then when you get to that conversion point, which is your launch, it should hopefully all come together and work, effectively. And so that's one example where like when you think about your limited resources and your limited time, knowing the one kind of area that you need to be moving the needle on in the larger timeline can be really, really helpful and comforting rather than being like, and oh my God, I need to be selling every day. It's like, actually, maybe right now, lead generation is the thing so that you can funnel into your launch. Or when it's launch time, it's not the best time for you to be bringing in new leads because you're going to need to warm them up anyways. So it lets you off the hook a little bit when you get a little more specific.
Yeah. Is there one core function that you see people like paying too much attention to?
I see people, I mean, everyone is like lead generation, right? They see the like person with 15,000 followers on Instagram and they're like, oh, that's easy money. But I actually think where I would say people pay too much attention to but are not intentional enough about is typically, so lead generation is where we spray and pray, and that doesn't usually work.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that's where people get really overwhelmed because they're doing all the things. Conversion is typically where the self-loathing comes in. And it's like, I suck at selling. I'm so bad at it, blah, blah, blah. And what I'm always trying to like showcase to people is actually this is a journey for our customers. And so conversion is going to be typically an outcome of you bringing in the right leads, nurturing them really well. And then when they're presented with your offer, it will feel like a pretty obvious yes if you've done those things well. Or, and make, again, for the right audience. So I think that it's like different, there's like a different emotionality to the different areas.
Yep.
Right. Delivery, I think, is people's comfort zone. And so they kind of hide behind delivery sometimes if they have enough to deliver on. And then I would say upsell, referral, and retention tends to be like an enormous money left on the table area.
Yes. Yes. Like I think service providers have a hard time actually imagining what they could do in that phase, right? Like a product-based business, I think it's easier for them to think, oh, well, yes, I have these complementary products. I could upsell, I could create some sort of like rewards program or loyalty program. And it's a straighter line there. But in the service space, I think a lot of people, that's a gaping hole in, those 5 core functions of what marketing is supposed to help you do.
Totally. So I definitely, I think that each of us, it's like a little bit, it's almost like an Enneagram. Like, which core function are you? Maybe I should make a quiz about this. A new
totally,
idea.
100% should. Yep, 100%. I vote for this.
But I do think that there is like different people have different attachments to the different parts. But this is where knowing your KPIs really matters, because if you can have a sense of like, okay, how many people do I actually need in my audience to hit X number of sales? Then you can be like, okay, I'm going to try these 3 audience growth pathways to help me hit my goals. And that's where we can start to get into the reverse engineering, because we have the data points rather than just the like marketing blob. Yeah,
totally. And I think, I mean, CRMs are great, but I think that there's a lot of blobbiness that gets like, that stays and just lives to fester in people's CRMs. And they don't take a lot of the information that is actually available to them, and they don't turn it into something that they can actually take an action on, like do something with. And a super basic, you have said this is not rocket science. This is my point in time where I'm going to say this is not rocket science, folks. But one of the best KPIs that a service provider can track for themselves is how many leads are you getting every month and how many are you booking? Because just knowing your batting average, right? I hate baseball, which is funny that that's what I call it. Your conversion rate, just knowing your conversion rate then helps you do that reverse engineering with the math and let you know, hey, I need X number of leads every month in order to book the number of clients that I also need. So it helps you set expectations. And then like Frenchie said, once you know those numbers, then you can you can do your marketing experiments in a really targeted way that actually helps you make those numbers a reality. And I loved what you said also about like the whole like onboarding. I mean, the tech founder in me, all of the bells and whistles and alarms went off when you just, that word onboarding is a very intense word in software, because especially when you are trying to build a piece of software that facilitates onboarding on its own without like a sales team. And it's one of the things that I spend way too much time thinking about because it's so important. And that's one of those lessons that, again, I don't see service providers being hyper aware of. Like the product folks who have successful and thriving e-commerce shops,
Yep.
like they know when there's a breakdown in their shit because like sales will drop,
Yep.
right? If something's broken on their website, like their onboarding process and user flow, if there is something literally broken, then the sales stop. But there's a disconnect between how someone who's trading time for or time for money thinks about what that user journey is, what that onboarding process is to get someone from discovering you to being a paying client.
Yeah.
And so that's another, like, I love that you're calling that out because people do really need to think about all of these things.
And I'm going to share a personal anecdote, a personal failure of mine, because I think it's important, is that we think about KPIs a lot as like data points that we have access to. And what I see happening a lot is that we forget a lot of the qualitative data points that we have access to directly from our customers. And so I had a launch this year. It was my 7th launch of my program, of my boot camp. 0 people signed up. That was my first 0-person launch ever, like in my whole business. And I was like, what the actual F happened? And I was like going through, I had my blinders on. I know all this stuff. And I had my blinders on. I was going through the motions. And then after the launch, when I stopped to think about it, I was like, okay, I was pre-launching and planting seeds for this launch and even having like an early bird application form and all these things, and nobody was filling it out. That should have been my early indicators.
Your ding, 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 ding. Yeah.
Of like, wait a minute, something's not right here. But I just kept going. And while I admire that quality in myself, it wasn't necessarily the best use of my time. But I say all that because I think that as entrepreneurs and as entrepreneurs who may be very online and like immersed in a lot of like rules and a lot of like lessons and a lot of courses and a lot of like freebies that people are shilling and telling us how to market, we can sometimes take on all that information and be like, I have the knowledge, and forget that like our core existence is always going to be around our customers. And so when we're looking for data and insights, we need to go outside of ourselves, outside of our heads, and actually be on the ground talking to our people. Or at the very least, if you're not talking to people, paying attention to what your people are doing or not doing, right? So in my case, those early alarm bells should have been going off. But I was kind of just like, well, this has always launched before and it's always worked. And like, blah, blah, blah. Why would anything be different this time? A lot of reasons things were different this time. So I wanted to share that because when in doubt, if you're ever feeling like so overwhelmed and you're like, I don't know what to do first, all of it feels important, is sometimes I think about one client of mine. I won't say her name, but she's my muse. And I'm like, what does she need me to do right now? Or what would she need me to do if she was in the like pre-buying stage? And I really think about her as the use case to drive my behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Is the person that you're thinking about the person that I also know?
Yes.
Yes. Well, so when she's listening, she can put it together.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. No, I am also watching her just go forth and fly, little birdie, and I fucking love it so much. But that's a really, really good point. You hear so many people talking about building things for your ideal client and but I love the way that you worded it. Like, what does she need from me right now?
Yeah.
Right? That's a very, how do I want to say this? I don't know. It's just it's a very humanistic way of saying, like, figuring the answer to that question out as a human to human, right? Like, what does this human need and what can this human provide and help them with? So I really love that. That's another thing that you all can temporarily tattoo across your forehead from Frenchie.
Stay close to the money.
So,
what does she or he or they need right now?
Yes, exactly. So, okay. So when it comes to, I mean, we've talked about quite a bit today, and I hope people are inspired to, you know, look at their marketing blob and break it down like Frenchie talked about and figure out where is it that you might be just totally like neglecting in your marketing. But so once people do that and they try to create their short line to stay close to the money, what's your one like please do this piece of advice when it comes to making sure that your marketing is actually making you the most money it can?
Yeah. So have a revenue roadmap, understand what you need to sell at what price point to how many people every single month to get to the annual outcome that you want. So I've said this in several workshops recently, and I'm like, it sounds like the stupidest thing ever. Here we are, just like Captain Obvious, you and me. No, but what I have said to people is that you are not supposed to be at your annual goal in January. And I think what happens is that January starts and people are like, oh my God, I'm running. I need to be at my annual goal. And it's like, if you can start to break down your revenue goals into monthly and or weekly, if you want to get that granular, I can't handle that. But if you want to get that granular,
No.
targets, you give yourself a lot more levers and control over what's happening rather than being like, I just need to get to this number this year. So it's not about getting to a total number, right? And let's just say that number is $100,000 in a year. It's about understanding, what am I selling, at what price point, and to how many people each month. And then from there, once we know that, then we can start to reverse engineer the work that we do in the 5 core functions to support that. And then we can start to think about, okay, well, then what do I need to do every day? And what actual work matters? Because typically what you're going to do is you're going to have really clear priorities based on that. And then the work that matters is the work that's helping you take action towards those priorities.
And those are the only tasks that should be on your to-do list.
Yeah.
Right. Not the other stuff. And I know that that's really hard to do. And so we all need a Frenchie to come in and just be like, nope, nope, nope.
I mean,
erase that.
I do mostly one-on-one work with people these days. And part of that is because, yes, there's the strategy, but then the execution of that strategy is really hard. And it's hard to motivate and it's hard to trust. And the trust piece, I think, is where having that like partnership and collaboration can help. And just whether it's someone that you hire, whether it's someone who is just in your life circle, like whatever it is, I think finding those people that you can talk to about it is really, really important.
It is super important because it's, strategy is already abstract for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then you sit down and I think maybe 5% of the business owners that I, have as friends, if that, went to business school. Like all of us are just reinventing this wheel for ourselves, right? Because we're trying to figure out as we go. And so when you're that kind of person, then that level of trust, like it's almost like a blind faith that you have to have in yourself that you made the right decision.
Yep.
And it's so easy to second guess yourself and borderline gaslight yourself that you didn't make the right decision. And so that's where having a consultant, a community, a friend that gets it, that you can just at least say the things that you are probably maybe embarrassed to say publicly, like to Instagram and ask these questions, like have someone. Cause I mean, I have those people in my life because we're all in the same fucking boat, you guys. Like it doesn't matter how long you've been marketing. It's just fucking hard.
And marketing yourself is the hardest part. And, it's so easy sometimes to give advice to others. And I think that nobody ever really knows what they're doing. And then you hit your next milestone and you initially that was your benchmark and then you hit it and you're like, what if it never happens again? How did I get there? Well, all the things. And so it is, we have all these tools in place. And then I think sometimes having the guardrails in place to implement and just move forward, if it's really what you want to do, is really, really valuable.
Yep. All right, folks. So, I mean, everyone listening is probably, well, maybe not. Maybe they haven't even met me for the first time. But, my thing is make the plan, do the plan. I know that you talk a lot about a strategy that doesn't get executed is like not having a strategy at all.
Yep.
But I really encourage people to do this thinking, look at those 5 core functions, do that reverse engineering of, hey, this is how much I want to make. This is what that looks like every month, so that you can actually break it into something bite-sized that doesn't just feel so big, right?
Yeah.
That makes it so much easier. So, okay, Frenchie, because I want everybody to have you in their lives. Like even I get the littlest bit of you in my life. So where can people connect with you? What do you want to point them to so that, they can just continue this journey of staying close to the money?
I love it. Find me on Instagram. I hang out there quite a bit. And then also get my guide, Stay Close to Money, 37 super easy ways to grow your revenue without being salesy. So definitely download that. And then once you download that, you'll also get my regular emails, which are, I always call them business-ish emails, but they're usually some sort of like value add thing that you can do in your own business as you think about your revenue growth. I usually like to share a little bit about some of my friends and then some other fun things in there.
Yes, I am on your mailing list, so I can vouch for them being fun and cute. And I always love your little spaghetti eating.
Oh, yeah. We got to love the spaghetti eating.
Graphic. So, well, thank you so much, Frenchie, for carving this time out of the day to record this episode. I will send me the links and then I'll put them in the show notes so people can easily access them. But I mean, you guys, let's all do as Frenchie tells us to do and stay close to the money. So thank you so much for tuning in to this month's episode. Show notes and fun blog posts will be up on prettyokpodcast.com. And if you enjoyed the conversation today, give it a like and subscribe. I never asked for that, but I'm going to ask for it today. And Geriatric Millennial, you will only find me on Instagram. Please don't try to have a conversation with me on TikTok, but that's Pretty Okay Podcast. And we'll be back next month with another fun episode and special guest. And until then, have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.